It's been a little while since I've touched directly on the impacts of social distancing and this whole pandemic thing that just keeps going. So in this video, I wanted to touch on the love language, if you will, of quality time and how we might be missing out on that because we have to social distance or because we're in lockdown, depends on where you are in the world. Various parts of the world are in some form of lockdown or another. Some are more extreme, some are a little more fortunate at the moment. So when we have moments like at the moment where we have to social distance, there is the love language of physical touch. But there is also the love language of quality time that kind of gets missed because physical touch is the obvious one. We're missing out on hugs, our regular affection giving and sharing. But quality time is one of those ones that can, especially if you're like me and it is one of your primary love languages, it can get missed out on and go by the wayside because we forget about all the incidental moments of quality time that we get normally. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, the 5 Love Languages is a book and research written and done by Gary Chapman, and it's amazing. Basically, it gives 5 different ways that we give or receive love. So we each have our love language as a primary, and of which quality time is one. So if you haven't read it or looked into that, I highly recommend it. But before we get into that aspect of it, I wanted to touch on another book that I'm reading, Together by Dr. Vivek H. Murthy. He is the former Surgeon General of the United States, and he has learnt and researched a lot about the effects of loneliness that is fairly prevalent in society at the moment, and I feel like it's a really timely topic as well because loneliness doesn't have to mean that we're lonely because no one wants to talk to us. Sometimes we're lonely because we're in isolation or we can't do the things that we normally want or need to do to fill up our cup. And there's different types of loneliness. So he speaks of intimate loneliness, so having someone who's your confidant and on an intimate level, and community loneliness and friendship, that sort of thing. So in his book, Dr. Murthy references Dr. John Cacioppo, who was the first to liken loneliness to hunger and thirst, identifying it as a necessary warning signal with biochemical and genetic roots. So Dr. Cacioppo's evolutionary theory of loneliness was rooted in the observation that humans have survived as a species, not because we have physical advantages like size, strength, or speed, but because of our ability to connect in groups. And then Dr. Murthy speaks for himself now, his own work. He notes that it's worth noting here that our ancestors' default setting was togetherness. So there is an element, and there's a lot of research, anthropological research and now medical research into the effects that loneliness has. So when we look at the quality time we might be missing with the people that we care about, the people that we want to spend time with, it's useful to then look at different ways we can still find that quality time, even if we're at a distance. So at the moment, we have social distancing, we have limited travel to go see the people that we want to see, whether it's within your country or around the world. That is quite limited at the moment. So basically everyone is in a long distance friendship relationship at the moment, unless you live with them or unless you work with them or unless you're fortunate enough to live in an area where you can still interact, but there's still limited interactions even now. So I'm going to reference Gary Chapman's work that he writes about quality time, because it's a really good note, and I noticed this when I first read this book years ago. The quality time isn't necessarily have to be done in person. Yes, it's definitely useful in person. There are definite benefits to it. It's probably a little more potent in a good way in person. But there are qualities of quality time that you can do by distance, especially when we're fortunate enough in this century's epidemic or pandemic, to have access to in technology. So Gary Chapman writes, like words of affirmation, which is another love language, the language of quality time also has many dialects. And one of the most common dialects of that is quality conversation. So if you look at one of the common dialects of quality time, it's about quality conversation. And we can have conversation in many ways. But he also notes that by quality conversation, I mean sympathetic dialogue where two individuals are sharing their experiences, thoughts, feelings, and desires in a friendly, uninterrupted context. He talks about the importance of quality time not being when you're both sitting there watching the same thing. That can be a little bit, or when you're both there but you're both on your phones. It's about actually engaging with each other. It doesn't have to be about anything in particular, but say in normal days, if you were to go out to dinner, it's about actually having conversation and having the attention on each other. And then I've highlighted this bit. He says, I will ask questions, not in a badgering manner, but with a genuine desire to understand your thoughts, feelings, and desires. So that summarizes quality time quite well in a way that we can tap into when we are maybe forced to social distance a little bit, or when we're limited with our ability to travel and visit those that we would normally be spending time with or want to spend time with. So when you look at quality time, if it's your thing, or if it's the thing of one of your loved ones, maybe check in with that as well. If you look at quality time as only something that you can do in person, then you might be finding it's a really hard time at the moment for that. But if you get a little bit creative and look at how you can do that and spend that actual quality time, even if from a distance, there's a lot more ways that you can tap into that. So I did share some of these ways in the video that I did at the beginning of all of this mess around how social isolation doesn't mean social distancing doesn't mean social isolation, rather. So one of them was definitely like you can have FaceTime or video calls, and I think the world has embraced that, even from businesses who have embraced the ability to connect between colleagues, between managers and employees through video call, through Zoom, and it's a really powerful thing. And I know that we might be getting a little bit of Zoom fatigue, which is fair also, but that just makes it all the more important that if you are spending quality time with someone that you care about, that you make it quality when you do, especially when we are mostly all spending so much time online now in order to stay connected, whether it's for work or personal reasons. So you can FaceTime, you can even have conversations on the phone, or even in messaging. There can be quality time in messaging if you feel like you're both in that conversation right there and then together. And I know that we all have lives to lead. I know that there are always things going on, but if there is the desire to connect with someone and you guys kind of make it like an appointment, you schedule it in because it's important to at the moment, especially when we have to connect online more than offline, it's important to make sure that you're present in the conversation as best you can. So that way that it fills up the cup. It fills up both cups. It fills up that need, that desire for connection, that we as human beings, evolution says that we need it. Evolution shows that we need it. So you're tapping into that, but also you're tapping into that sense of how you give or receive love, even from friends, even from colleagues and workmates, but especially from family and people close to you in close relationships. So that is the main thing, is you can look at doing things like that, and allowing yourself to maybe normalize that a little bit. And I wanted to bring that up again because I know that it was spoken about a lot at the beginning of all of this, but by this stage we are at the point where things might be becoming a little bit, you know, we might be getting a little over it, or we might be getting a little bit complacent about things because, you know, it was all this new thing that we all had to adjust to, and now it's just the same old, nothing's quite changing just yet. So it's just a little bit of a reminder, but a refresher of why it is important to keep connected. And when you're not getting that incidental connection that you might get normally when you are out and about, and doing the things that you normally used to do, there was incidental connection, there was incidental quality time that would pop up, and maybe there's less opportunity for that at the moment. And if you're finding that is the case, or you're realizing that you're feeling a little lonely, there's nothing wrong with you. It just means that in everything we just are having, once, like most other things, we're having to find not necessarily new, but being more regular with these alternative ways of staying in connection and filling up our love language cups, whatever it is for you, and filling up that sense of connection, that need for connection that we all have as humans. And even if you're an introvert, again, I get it. I thought I'd be great with this. There were still moments of realizing that I rely on that incidental connection a lot more. I didn't realize it before. So I relied on that a lot more than I realized. And then when that was taken away, it took a little bit, and then realizing, oh, I'm missing something. What is it I'm missing? So when you do speak to your loved ones or your colleagues or whoever you speak to, a little reminder to try and be present with them when you do, as best you can, just so that there is that sense of, you have my attention, I want to hear about your thoughts and feelings and desires, and I want to understand you, and I want to get an understanding and keep doing that, because that is a really, really important and key way that we as humans can connect with each other as well. So if you needed that little bit of a reminder, or that little slight tweak on your perspective of it all, there you have it.